Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today we are talking about learning styles, national operational guidance, and the procedures and training that empower firefighters to deal with incidents effectively and safely.
We've had over the last probably decade a number of high-profile incidents where the strict adoption of procedure has either limited us operationally or has stifled people to believe that they can step out of procedure for fear of trouble or retribution towards them. What we want people to do is become a sort of thinking firefighter. We want to have some underpinning knowledge that they can then apply at operational incidents in a flexible manner. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the benefits versus the risk? And what's your expectation? And if we can answer those questions, and within that flexible guidance, should be able to resolve the incident.
Today's episode was brought to you by our friends at William Wood Watches, the British watch brand upcycling firefighter materials in dedication to the founder's grandfather. Now you will find William Wood Watches both at williamwoodwatches.com and also featured in the New York Times, Forbes, the Financial Times, and if you head on over to their website, which you will see the link for in the bottom of this podcast, you'll be able to feast your eyes on the Chivalrous, the Valiant, the Bronze, the Triumph, and the Amethyst collection. William Wood Watches have been with the podcast since its inception, really, and there's a couple of reasons that we've stuck together. Number one is for the authenticity of the brand. Now, these used upcycled firefighting equipment from the straps to the helmets and build them into these beautiful timepieces. From the iconic logo, which is a profile of the 1920s British firefighter's helmet, which of course stands for that heroism and bravery, which they have located on the watch dials and the crowns of the watch as well. Personally, my most favorite bit is the straps themselves. So these are upcycled fire hose that have served a minimum of 10 years on the front line with firefighters, getting thrown down the side of motorways, hauled up the sides of buildings, and really ensure that every single William Wood watch has a real British firefighting history beaten through every single component of it. I've personally got the Valiant collection with the red strap, and I've had it probably coming on 3 years now. And also, if you head on over to their website now, you may just grab the back end of the Always Ready motorcycle. Now, this is a collaborative fundraiser where William Wood Watches have partnered with the talented Saltire Motorcycles based in Scotland to create the world's first William Wood Watches motorcycle. Now, this is incorporating the workings of the watches themselves, and it's got multiple elements of upcycled firefighting materials. It is a one-off motorcycle that is being auctioned, and all proceeds will be donated to the Firefighters charity in the UK, supporting firefighters and their families. The winning ticket holder can also claim their free riding lessons and theory and practical instruction on site at their Edinburgh facility. There are only 300 tickets available for this, so head on over to williamwoodwatches.com. Firstly, take a look at the watches, and secondly, jump in there for that Always Ready motorcycle prize draw. Our next partner for today's podcast is HAIX. HAIX is a leading manufacturer of functional shoes for fire departments, police, and our military troops. The tagline, "Heroes Wear HAIX," is absolutely no joke, and you will see these boots on the feet of British Firefighter Challenge competitors, frontline operators. And for you, our dear listener, every single month we are giving away a free pair of HAIX. You can get your hands on the Black Eagle Nature GTX, which of course are waterproof, breathable, and offers the highest comfort in absolutely any weather. I was in Coniston in the Lake District very recently, and of course took with me my Black Eagle Nature GTX. And then at Mr. Beat, we were going through rivers, up the side of mountains, into the slate mines. So to be in with the chance to win, head on over to one of our social media platforms, scroll back to the beginning of the month. On the first of every single month, we release the competition, and you can be in with a chance to win. A final request from me: if you hit that subscribe or follow button, it acts as a really important indicator for us to see the success of each episode, and also helps grow the podcast, reaching more and more people to share the stories of our frontline operators and people that operate in this sector. So without further ado, we're going to jump in there with today's guest, Ben B, as we talk about learning styles, national operational guidance, and empowering our frontline operators to make those crucial life-saving decisions to deal with those increasingly complex incidents in a safe and effective way. Ben B, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How you doing, boss?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
So I wanted us to get together because you've been part of some awesome projects as part of your career, and some of the stuff we're going to talk today is about differences in learning, national operational guidance, and those differences between knowledge and understanding. But I wanted to start just to give people a little bit of a sort of holistic zoom out. When did you join the fire service, and why do you want to be here?
I joined January 2001. It was my mum that actually pushed me down this road.
Really?
Yeah, I've got 3 sisters. They were all in the public sector. My mum's in the public sector as well, so I think it was always a vocational aspect of my family. She thought I'd be good in the fire service. I applied, was lucky to get in. So yeah.
Did you consider any other services?
No, I think we'd pretty much boxed it off. We've got police, health. So fire was probably the final piece of the puzzle. My mum's in care,
So an entirely family of givers. Do you know what? There's a funny correlation there because my sister's a primary school teacher, my brother-in-law's a paramedic, and my wife teaches children with autism, which has got like an animal centre where they do shared learning with people that struggle. And someone said to my mum recently, she was like, "Isn't it weird that all of your," because she refers to my wife and my brother-in-law, she refers to them as kids. Why is it weird that all your kids have chose to do something that is public facing? Because ironically, she works in a very corporate environment, different to your mum. But I don't know what it is about that. I always think it's a shorter connection between the effort you give and you can see an immediate outcome, like in the fire service and paramedic emergency service, stuff like that. You can see there's a shorter gap between what you do and the difference it makes. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that's why the job can be really engaging for people.
I really enjoy it, and it's that sense of generally we win more times than we lose when we go out to incidents, and I appreciate that. And it's adding value, hopefully, to society. But the other thing was I was in the fitness industry before, and I just couldn't see myself doing that till I was 50, 60. I didn't think people were going to listen to me after a certain period of time.
It's one of those things that has a great relation to everybody. I do stuff in that sort of coaching environment, but sometimes the sector does look ugly as hell. Sometimes I question continue to exist in it. It's quite hypocritical at times. It's struggling to be part of it. Now, in the past 5 years, you've played a role in the creation and improved application of something called National Operational Guidance. Now, for anybody that's been living on Mars and they're unclear of what it is, tell us a little bit about it and how it aids people in the emergency services.
We've had over the last probably decade a number of high-profile incidents where the strict adoption of procedure has either limited us operationally to react or has stifled people to believe that they can step out of procedure for fear of trouble or retribution towards them. I think the National Operational Guidance is quite clear about saying what we want people to do is become a sort of thinking firefighter. We want to have some underpinning knowledge that they can then apply at operational incidents in a flexible manner with a view of successful outcome, and not to be strictly driven by doctrine. And it links back really for the decision control process. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the benefits versus the risk? And what's your expectation? And if we can answer those questions, then within that flexible guidance should be able to resolve the incidents. And I think that's what they're trying to push, a national agenda, and that's balanced against the current national, international picture around inquiries, etc., of going when we start to get down to the finite detail.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting time for
that inquiry mindset, because I remember when I first joined the service, I know you've been in for a little bit longer than I have, that it was always pitched to me that all emergency services are like a collection of really resourceful people with a toolbox and freedom in their knowledge development training on how they choose to apply it. You know, they had a very clear why. You know, the values and core beliefs of organizations are very clear, but the what and the how was empowered the individual to say, look, you're trained, you're competent. But you're right, we had those number of high profile incidents where inquiries and quote unquote finger pointing, and it really did scare people away from acting with authority. It was almost like, I wouldn't want to call it micromanagement, but people almost became scared to use the knowledge that they had. And it's a bit like a muscle. You don't use it, you lose it. So this is sort of giving a structure from my familiarization with it to allow people to really step back into that confidently. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'd agree with elements of that. I think the other focus that I see from National Operational Guidance is pushing back onto a personal responsibility as a firefighter, incident commander, to have that knowledge when you leave the station, and then when you get there is to use it flexibly. And I think that's the mindset that is being tried or is trying to be changed. And I think it links back to the Health and Safety Executive really striking the balance document. Simple 1-2 page read, but it was saying, the Health and Safety Executive was saying, we expect you to operate in an environment where not all the risks are known, not all the risks are controlled, but we expect you as well to be able to work towards resolving that incident. And I think that is a good sort of element for incident commanders to have in their back pocket. I'm underpinned with this knowledge. In the other knowledge that there are sections of our organisation through our incident command policy that support successful decision making and decision making around flexible guidance. The HSE support it. So it's just being confident, but as you said about the muscle, if we don't exercise that muscle, then we lose the confidence.
And all of a sudden, common sense doesn't become commonplace, and that starts to worry people. and stops them from making decisions that deep down they know to be safe. I think a lot of people struggle with the idea of some of the emergency services in that we do consistently exist in a very dynamic environment. Most people will be familiar with going to an office or going to a fairly consistent place of work. Emergency services, paramedics, firefighters, police officers, their place of work, the vast majority of the time, is a very dynamic and evolving place. So it's knowing when to cross the bridge from controlling the controllables and sticking to the quote-unquote hard and fast rules of what we know to be safe. And then when you're interacting with an emergency incident, there's so many uncontrollables that you have to almost throw a scaffolding around to try and get topside and get control of something with that knowledge that you've been empowered with.
But to add to that is that the National Operational Guidance philosophy is around spotting those hazards when you arrive at an incident, and what is the priority at this point in time and dealing with that. Whereas a procedural take on it means that you take step one. And once you've done step one, you do step two. And you might be able to do simultaneous activity, but broadly, this is the way that you move through the incident. National Operational Guidance is saying, I've spotted that hazard, I've spotted that, and these are my control measures in my toolbox. Okay. And I think that, again, that sort of keeps trying to be reinforced. That's what we are trying to reinforce, to change that mindset. So you are more confident about making command decisions and operating as a firefighter, potentially around the rear of a building or inside a building in breathing apparatus where you haven't got direct supervision at all times. So it's down to that person's personal responsibility and ability to say, actually, this is what needs to be done now to control that hazard. So it's a change.
Now, we never operating alone, and we have seen sort of historically and through inquiries and stuff like that, sometimes there's been a little bit of criticism about the fact that we don't want emergency services operating as silos. So sort of stepping back and holistically looking at how this works in a collaborative sense, who does this affect National Operational Guidance in terms of GESIP and other organisations? Is this something that they're familiar with? Do they have similar models? From your position in sort of a national group, how much of that conversation has happened cross-service?
I think with the exception of the marauding terrorist attack over the last couple of years, which has improved, all of the other areas, if I give you an example of environmental protection, National Operational Guidance was written in direct conjunction with the Environment Agency. So the two linked together.
Because when most people think about emergency services, it's not just those police, fire and ambulance, it's all of the canal trusts and environmental protection agencies and hazardous materials companies, and there's so many. And even when you go out to RNLI and Coast Guards and Mountain Rescue, the net widens and widens as you go, depending on the incident, I suppose.
No, it really does. And you've got certainly the police have their national decision-making models, and we have our decision-making models, and that's been brought together in the joint decision model through GESIP. I think working closely together on some key national risks that then drop down into our local risk. We've got a real good infrastructure with the local resilience forum, where our Cat 1, so police, fire, ambulance, etc., linking with our Cat 2 responders, local authority, and we can work with those to develop the plans that fall out of the back of either National Operational Guidance or GESIP coming in from the other way.
I want to double click on that quickly. So for people, there's a lot of people that don't necessarily live in the UK that might be listening. What is GESIP for people that are unfamiliar with it?
Okay, so the Joint Emergency Service interoperability principles are around working together. It underpins, really, provides direct guidance to emergency services and what we classed earlier on Category 2 responders, so it could be utility companies, etc. And what GESIP seeks to do is to ensure that at the earliest opportunities and then throughout the incident into the recovery phase, we work together and we sort of jointly understand risk. We jointly understand what each other's priorities are and what needs are and what purpose we're trying to achieve collectively towards working together and saving lives. Those GESIP principles have been around for a good number of years and have recently been updated in October of this year, but we are still at a point where we need to continue to embed it. It's not fully embedded everywhere.
No. I think a lot of this has been happening on a very local level for a very, very, very long time. I mean, I remember back, 15, 16 years ago, whenever I joined, we were doing local drills. You'd invite paramedics and police officers to come at that level. But it felt like at the strategic level and above, that ironically was maybe where it was happening less, and not because there was a lack of desire there, but because these large-scale incidents, like this has come to light because I've had a lot of national scale incidents from terrorist attacks to hazardous materials to agriculture and diseases and stuff like that. it's that level where there's less occasions where, gold command, strategic level conversations and organizations are getting together on these incidents. So for the upper levels to catch up with it, what do you think it takes to really fully embed this?
I disagree with you,
Okay.
actually, but mainly probably because of the areas of work I'm in directly links to these, purely that
and again, I'm sure people might disagree with me on the local level, because I've benefited from, but some people, I've never trained with a paramedic. We've never had them at the station. So some of this is very personal.
And as I said, it's not completely embedded everywhere, and people are new or unresponsive to it. But I would say, in the main, at a strategic level within Leicester, as well as at higher levels, there is a focus on the JESIP, and a lot of the time it happens almost as business as usual, without, for argument's sake, firefighters knowing in the background there's already been a tactical coordinating group.
Stops duplication
for 2 weeks.
A lot of time,
and the tactical coordinating group, which is a mechanism for our tacticians to meet together, not at the incident ground, remotely from that mechanism has been instigated by our Cat 2 responders.
Yeah.
And that's happened in the last month within Leicestershire. Others wouldn't necessarily know that, but have we got an oversight of what the operational impact of this incident is? Let's think about it, and who else needs to know?
Yeah.
What do we need to share risk information with? What's your priority? What's ours? And that's working together again. So I think it's familiar. We're doing training up at Shepshed that links in those emergency responders and other agencies to continue to embed that and keep that message going.
I think some of the stuff I've found most helpful as an incident commander is even just the simple things like knowing who's in charge. Do you know what I mean? So, and you see this in America, where a lot of the time they will have the fire service take overall command, because we're quite good at command and structure, because we're working with larger teams. And a lot of fire engines, you'll have a minimum of 4 personnel, even globally, that'll be their smallest team, whereas a police officer or a paramedic might be riding alone. So when you get multiples of them turn up at incidents, sometimes it's difficult from a fire service perspective to know who is your point of contact. So even that's only a very, 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 very small part of JESIP. I found that incredibly useful, because you also don't want to step out of line asking a police officer or a paramedic, what's their brief, what are they actually doing, can they just do this for you? Having those points of control and having these, multi-agency briefs have been so useful right at the ground level, and I appreciate that's a very small part of it.
No, but a crucial part of it.
Yeah.
Because the rest of society wants to carry on around the emergency incident we're at, and as well, there's competing pressures on different organisations.
Yes, so you see it on the motorways and stuff like that. Bless them, when it costs millions and millions of pounds every time we're closing these for ages and ages, and some of those efficiencies might be lost because we're simply not working collectively as efficiently as we could be to bring the incident to a quick and healthy conclusion, I suppose. I wanted to move on to some of the big aspects about continuous improvement. Now, you've built into the NOG, or as a sort of national group, it's been onto the NOG, the crucial acknowledgement that the world of the frontline responders is continually evolving. Now, on the website, it references input of key influences and inspection outcomes. Now, who or what organisations are actually tasked with that ongoing development, and how do the inspections work?
Do you mean the inspections with regards to HMI, or?
Yes. So how is it sort of who's checking the people that are doing it, if that makes sense, and how is it built in that we've got these key influences? So it says about pulling in certain people to support on different aspects of national operational guidance. For example, the brigade that you're a part of have been a key driver in a lot of high-rise procedures that have gone in the UK, and there'll be different specialists around the UK. That continuous improvement, is that like an annual thing where we see these developments in the industry and it will be checked against key leaders in the UK fire service, or how does that work?
Okay, I'll try and simplify it, because there's probably a few bits to unpack with that. At a national level, I see it at the moment that there's 3 key areas. National operational guidance links in with our fire standards board. Newly developed fire standards board produced last year 3 standards around operations, around preparedness, competence and learning. And that signpost directly to national operational guidance and say, for you to be compliant with this fire standard, we need you to carry out the strategic actions and implement a culture where it's firefighters looking at health, safety in the form of hazards and control measures on the incident ground. Okay. So the first one was National Operational Guidance, second one Fire Standards Board, and the third piece of that puzzle is the HMI, Her Majesty's Inspectorate, Constabulary Fire and Rescue Services.
I've never got that right. I'm surprised you went for it. Well done.
I just thought just to expand on the acronyms, because within all of these
we are terrible for all the acronyms.
We've got acronyms everywhere. So if you imagine those three areas at the national level playing out, one is signposting and saying, if you want to meet this standard, go and do this.
Yeah.
The checkers, the assurance that then comes in is the HMI have said, well, if you set some standards in the Fire Standards Board, we'll then come and measure you by them.
Yeah.
So at a national level and an external level to our service, when the HMI come in May next year, they'll be looking towards these areas to say, how are you competent at this? How have you prepared for this? How are you ensuring continuous learning?
How long has that been going on? Because this is happening all over the UK, isn't it? But I don't recall it. I think maybe I was just in my own world for a number of years at the beginning of my career, perhaps. But this has become a large focus. I don't know whether it's people, I mean, everybody's worried about funding and stuff like that, certainly in the UK. But when is it? Because it's becoming quite a large focus, and there's sort of a ranking system with efficiencies and turnout times all over the UK now. And it's getting very intense some places.
I think it is, without going down the political route too far.
Yeah, and rightly so, because we are a public organisation. We need to show what we're doing with the pennies.
But effectively, I think as well, so in a crude manner, you can say that the wheel always comes back round full circle. We used to have inspections beforehand, and that seems to be that is the nature of coming back. But if we focus on two things as a purpose of it, one is the Fire and Rescue Service is here to try to prevent events happening that will injure members of our community, and then if the event happens, to try to limit the impact of that. If the driver for that is effective working, if we've got 43 fire and rescue services all doing different things at the same types of incidents, then it's difficult to keep your staff safe.
I'm not sure fire is that different in Scotland. I think it's still fairly hot and dangerous, and so as many incidents. So it does always have a striking hilarity to it when we see so many different ways of doing what effectively is the same why.
And that's, I think, one of the key findings in the early HMI reports was that it's been done so differently.
Yeah.
However, over here in the corner, something that was gaining some traction was National Operational Guidance, which had a consistent message about, I don't mind how you put that fire out.
Yep.
That's up to you as individual services working together. But this is the hazard you'll face when you go to a fire, and this is the tools that you might need as in control measures, and then you choose how to implement them, which gives us a structure. And I think that's what my personal opinion is the HMI look towards, to say, well, okay, for the operational side, not prevention or protection at this point, that is the direction to travel. Yeah. However, there was an absence of a standard. What was driving fire and rescue services to have to do it, other than the HMI come in to inspect and say, you're still not implementing this activity? Well, let's set some standards. Yeah. If you set the standards, we'll measure you by them.
The beauty of setting your own standards as well is it shows that you have an internal desire to want to deliver greater value. It's always it feels kind of empty when you do something just because you have to, and it's like, well, you should want to. A lot of people join the emergency service because they sincerely want to make a difference. So being able to set our own standards and then hold each other accountable to it is a great step forward. I wanted to just jump back. You said there about helping people identify hazards. What was the initial sort of framework? Where did you, because hazards, some of which will have been the same for decades, but in this new and evolving world, hazards become multiples of myriads of different, all the businesses setting up and the variety of things that we encounter. How did all the sort of organisation collect together all of these hazards, what's known? How did the library get put together?
Okay, so going back just prior to National Operational Guidance coming around 2014, there was a collaborative partnership started up in the southeast of the country, and effectively that was a number of services working together. They worked together to produce consistent guidance, but alongside that, nationally, we had about 8,000 different documents. Dear Chief Officer letters going back to the 50s and 60s that were still classed as extant guidance.
And some of them have golden nuggets in them. Some of them are, you may only ever experience it once in your career, but it killed somebody once. So it's a valuable piece of information.
So we might be doing some work on confined spaces and underground activity, etc., and the hazards and control measures that might exist there. So with the National Operational Guidance, for each one, as they go through the review cycle, they get in subject matter experts outside the Fire and Rescue Service as well as inside to collect all of those documents that relate to that subject, condense it down to grab the nuggets and see what the latest industry guide is. It really has been, hence why it's taken sort of 5 years. Really,
and also them doing it, I suppose, stops you being subject to that groupthink and that sort of subconscious bias of what we believe to be the case.
Yes, but ultimately you've still got a group of individuals that think this is the direction we think fire services should take. So you've still got an element of groupthink, but what I will say is the core message that they were trying to drive towards was we need guidance that's flexible and can be applied in a range of situations, to ensure firefighter safety, but effectiveness on the operational ground.
Love it. So when I was looking at the website, it breaks itself down specifically into guidance, training, learning, and tools.
Yeah.
The difference between training and learning. So I'd love for you to speak around training can be done in a myriad of different ways.
Yeah.
But talking about different learning styles and the level of guidance that goes into that, how do you see the difference between training and learning, and how smooth that can be for the fact that we have so many diverse individuals working in the fire service? Everybody learns differently, and across a lot of different services we train differently. So we've got this very good supportive guidance on how to identify hazards, but the difference between training and learning, because you've had a long career operating in different parts of the fire service, how do you think that's applied differently?
Okay, yeah, just for clarity, that guidance that we can apply how we wish, it does always link back, as I said, about the decision control process. You've got to be able to justify your decision making. But initially it's set out nationally to set the guidance. As that grew and people started to engage with the guidance aspect, they said, well, what do we do about training people?
Yeah. How do we implement this, and how can we use it? It's great.
That's right, but then training specifications were produced at it. I think for national operational guidance, training and learning are probably two different aspects. Okay. I know they can be tied together. Indeed, for us, learning development encompasses the training as well. We're probably talking about operational or organisational learning separately. But on the training aspect, it really was about teaching people the underpinning knowledge and the initial acquisition of skills so that they understand the hazards that they may be facing. Okay. And then these are the options in your control measures that you may choose to apply according to a priority order of whatever's required at the incident. And then that sets you up to be in a position where you can repeat those hazards and control measures, the application of the control measures on a number of occasions. So if we can accurately repeat set criteria in those training specifications a number of times, that's where we start to prove competence. Yeah. So at the point when the bells go down on a station and we now proceed to an incident, we are trained, competent individuals. Yeah. That then in the field, we can apply that guidance flexibly.
Allows you to safely put certain aspects of it into the subconscious and react to what you're actually seeing, rather than worrying about, do I have the capability to even apply the skill set that I've got? A lot of that should already be, like you say, subconscious. Once you've made the decision of how you're going to deal with the hazard, you can do so competently.
That's right. You should already be in a position that this is not a new environment to you completely. Yeah. But then, as part of the health and safety sort of aspects of this, is you've got a plan, do, check, act. Yes. So we've done all the planning. We've put that in place. Firefighters are doing the training on stations, and then we're going out to do some of the doing. Well, while we're doing that, we want to check that actually, does the guidance meet the incident commander's needs? Or is it being applied in the correct way? Is there some learning here, how we can improve it or better protect firefighters or be more effective for members of the community? And I think that's where the learning is different to ordinary learning that might be in the classroom. So it's observation, and what we're trying to move towards is not a single overview of the incident, but themed audits, themed assurance on is it fit for process, is it fit for purpose, the guidance and the training. And that links back in then all three components, our risk assessments, our guidance, our training should all be linked together. So that if we do need to make an adjustment, all three get changed and improves the situation. We then need to decide, are we going to share that learning outside of our organisation? Because there could be national learning. You spoke earlier on about the evolving nature of what we're facing now. Wide area flooding, climate change, lithium-ion batteries. These are new hazards that we haven't always been facing before, or certainly not to the scale that we currently are. And it's being agile enough now to move at pace, because the technology moves at such
I say
pace.
to people, the only constant now is change. It's going at such an accelerating rate that you want to strike that balance between not being death by input and death by PowerPoint. If you spend so long absorbing, you don't get a chance to repeat and embed, because everything's new coming out all of the time. You mentioned something there, and I know it's something we discussed before we came up, but I want to ask you about operational discretion, because obviously there's something we practice in the UK Fire and Rescue Service. I'm unsure if it's the same terminology across the world. However, this is something that in theory, and I'd love you to expand on it, we should only necessarily ever need to use once. And how does that align with national operational guidance in limiting the number of times something like operational discretion should be required?
It's probably a whole separate...
It probably is, isn't it? For people that are unfamiliar with it, what is operational discretion?
Okay, so operational discretion is for where something is unforeseeable. That's supposedly part of the definition around it. There is the element that does get picked up that it should only be used once, and then we should put procedure in place.
It's no longer an unforeseen, theoretically, after that, is it?
That's correct. Some of this is my own opinion, but effectively, if I put a procedure in place because a certain thing has happened, then I've now moved away from that purpose of what we were trying to do, guidance. Use it flexibly. I know the control measures that I've got available to me, but do you know what? On this occasion, those control measures aren't suitable or sufficient. I've still got my why do I want to do this? What's the benefit versus the risk and my expectation by doing it? So for argument's sake, I might go to a fire at a complex laboratory that's doing pharmaceuticals. The fire is going to escalate to a point where we're going to have a major incident. The scientist that's there is familiar with the respiratory protective equipment, has never worn a breathing apparatus set in their life, and they know that you need to turn switch A off, close down valve B, and do. By the time they've told us, you know, give us 3 marbles, we'll lose 2 and break 1. So we go in, but actually, it might be in that circumstance my benefit versus risk of a major incident, that's going to last for days, if not weeks. My expectation of what's going to happen by travelling this short distance to go in and take this control measure that I've now adapted, and why am I doing it? Well, the wider impacts of what may happen if we don't. Now that's foreseeable. Now I've told you about it. So do I start putting in place procedures that how do we train members of the public, let's say?
Because even within that foreseeable, there's a myriad of subsections within it. It's like an atom. Once you fracture it open, you go, crikey, right. So there's 27 procedures within one now. So even just like an RTC, you go, well, it's location, it's size, it's number of vehicles. There's so many layers that, like you say, you need... not rough, but you need guidance, but you can't take the complete power out of people by just saying, look, which procedure is it? You using A, B, or C? Well, I'm kind of using a bit of A and I'm a bit of D, actually. And you go, well, they're all recognised, so you're absolutely fine, and you're a knowledgeable individual. You've got better eyes on it than we have.
So I'm purposely avoiding giving the definition of operational discretion. People can have a look on the National Operational Guidance for that. But the reason I'm doing that is that, let's take a slightly different example, is that we've had a number of cases in the UK in the last 2, 3, 4 years where there have been individuals, unfortunately, that have entered water within their vehicles, and we've carried out submerged rescues. That's getting up into the teens and above. That's being reported through that learning, through the operational learning. There's the advantage to doing it, because it adapts guidance at a national level. And it's got to the point where earlier on we were talking about the health and safety executive and striking the balance, where it's saying actually we're probably moving towards an area now where this is not only foreseeable, it's reasonably foreseeable. You need to have other processes in place here. You then look at a Shire brigade, and for argument's sake, that service might not have the funds to provide a dive team. Because
then you can say, well, a dive team, we're just doing water familiarisation, we're doing swift water, we're getting boats. Do you know what I mean? Where do we fall on the spectrum?
That's right. So the from a national operational learning point of view, that example about the scientist hasn't been reported 15 times yet, for argument's sake. It may never happen. However, there gets a certain point where you say, I think you're probably stretching operational discretion here. This is something you need to find another solution for. Now, it could be you could provide your own ability to do underwater search and rescue, or you might have other avenues you can explore that you can then create agreements with. Either way, this is now foreseeable. You need to be able to manage the risk. And I think that's the operational discretion gives an incident commander the latitude to say, I know my procedures, I know my hazards and control measures, I know my guidance, and I can't quite apply it in this instance. It might only be a one-off, but that doesn't mean we have to create then guidance around it. So
as a national group, is that something that gets reviewed consistently, annually? Is there a trigger, i.e., 20 incidents nationally, where as a collective group you discuss it and go, right, the trends are showing X number of incidents across the UK. Now, was that just a one-off because we had a hot summer last year, or we suffered a lot of high water rise? You know, that very flexible in its application, is it? Or
well, at a local level, we have our rating system that's based on the national best practice guidance. Once it starts to move into those areas, there's two key areas where it says that this is probably national learning or could be national learning. We feed that up from Leicestershire into the National Operational Learning User Group, which is the national body, and on there sit members of the HSE, Fire Brigade Union, and National Operational Guidance partners, where they're reviewing to a point where it might be a trend. So lithium-ion batteries we spoke about very briefly earlier on, it's coming out now as a trend, and we might be told, here, information note. Here's some information about composite fence panels that are occurring in the UK. You don't need to do anything at the moment with it, but you might need to be aware of it and consider it in your training and guidance. On the other hand...
Where do they then live after that's happened? Because, for example, that's extremely useful for operational members currently, but there's a lot of recruitment going on across the UK. So for somebody that comes in 12 months later, if that's not part of this, we're going to come into this 36-month library and content, where will I'm imagine it's on a library somewhere, but
no, it's really good. It's a very pertinent point, especially with the 36-month planner that we're putting in place now. Is it's twofold. Is our operational assurance department put it on the operational assurance site.
Okay.
So all of those national operational learning, which is fire service specific, or joint organisational learning, which links back to your JESIP. So it might be something. We've just had one to do with railways come in this week. That's all published on SharePoint for us in Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service.
Okay.
We also pick some key ones out quarterly to put in our operational learning bulletin, with a view that what we wanted to do is people to see a short article on it and then go and find some further information.
Okay.
The further information goes into the training packages. And what what has happened historically is that we move from one priority to another in the fire and rescue service quite regularly.
We can be reactive, lurching from one to the next.
Exactly. So what we said is actually in September next year, there's some confined space training that's going out because it's in our 36-month planner.
Okay.
Can this wait until then so the learning can be embedded? So when your individual comes in 12 months' time, they might miss it the first time, but when it comes through the next time, that learning's there.
Yeah.
What we're also doing is enhancing that you must learn this. This is our compulsory sort of training packages, but there's some reflective learning you can take here if you want to enhance your knowledge and understanding about a subject. And again, it will be repeated there. So there's sort of multiple opportunities to engage with individuals around these information notes, the action notes. We are required to ensure that we do some.
I was going to say, how do you quiet? What's the discipline process of quieting that inner voice where you're like, got to find something out. It's really important. I need to tell everybody now in case it happens tomorrow. And then the discipline of going, actually, we don't want to just seem like noise and lurching from thing to thing. We have a structure here. Let's try and keep to the structure. But then the theoretical other person who may have had the report come to them going, we need to tell them now. It needs to go out now.
Definitely. And that's, the short answer to that is staff feedback.
Okay.
Feedback from crews is there's so much information that comes out. And the wealth.
Everything's a priority. Well, everything can't be a priority, otherwise there is no priority.
And if you sit in my office arranging my crayons on the desk day to day, then I sit there thinking it's a health and safety priority, get it out.
Yeah.
However, I'm trying to balance, and the service is trying to balance that. Okay, when's the right time for this information to go out so that we can start to deliver messages in a consistent fashion over time in a programmed way. So there is a lot of information, but we're giving you at the right time.
Yeah.
Incident Command comes out in December's theme, and there's a number of actions that we've had ready since August that we felt weren't safety critical. That could wait until December, so it rolls out together as a collective. And I think that is a great move forward for the service, and something I'd support wider is that it allows you the breathing space to plan for these changes. And we spoke... and
also not to take your eyes off fundamentals. Because if you're constantly going from niche to niche, like, here's a small change, there's a small change, people don't get an opportunity to cruise across different services, don't get the opportunity to or they may argue they may have the opportunity to do the fundamentals. Crikey, when's the last time we did some BA? When's the last time we threw some ladders up? When's the last time we did some bumping? I can't remember the last time we went to local risk. We're too busy doing X, Y, Z maybe. Yeah,
and the base scenario from National Operations Guidance is all incident actions. So all actions will be mobilised. We'll travel to an incident. Once we get there, we'll safely get off. We'll apply cordons. We'll do dynamic risk assessment. Do those repeated activities, because that is your core training and guidance being put into the incident ground. And what we need to then do is that by having it structured, it's been built with gaps in that process so that you can pick up as a watch or a crew manager that actually we weren't that great at putting that ladder up at that job the other week, but we know we've got a space coming up to do that activity. It's not about saying for every training session, you will follow this.
Otherwise, you take away from the manager's ability to develop deficiencies in the watch. We can't universally say every firefighter across the UK is the same, because they won't. They'll all have unique development areas specific to them, and you need to leave that breathing room for people to manage their team and do the training they believe is going to make everybody as collectively competent and efficient as possible, I suppose.
Agreed. And then that certainly isn't helped if we put something out on a Monday saying you need to do this within 4 weeks' time, because you don't know whether you're coming or going. So it's just trying to compartmentalise. And I think what's good about that is that previously might be one department pushing that, but we are working across departments in a much improved fashion now, and it's more coordinated.
Now, I wanted to sort of change tact a little bit and ask you yourself. So you've developed a pretty effective learning style yourself. When you decided long ago to first further your own sort of career and professional development, you undertook a series of IFE exams. We've had them on the podcast. You were fairly successful with it. Could you expand on that and how you feel that's prepared you for your career?
Yeah, I think it must have been about 2011, 2012, something like that, took the first IFE exams. And I still remember the very first question on the syllabus was, what is a flame? Yeah. And I was still playing rugby at the time, and I thought, if I was to stand in the rugby club and people talking to me, what's fire then? And I thought, could I really explain it to a decent level, not without being Brian Cox or something like that about it. But
Brian Cox is a wonderful example, and Einstein, when they say when you fully understand the subject matter, you should be able to explain it to a child.
And for me, I couldn't sit there reading that syllabus and think, where would I start? And I've always been inquisitive anyway. I think that's in my nature to be like that. So that sparked, excuse the pun, a bit of an interest in okay, then let's learn a little bit more about this. What I felt myself at that stage was I knew the equipment on the fire engine. I knew my topography around my patch. I knew the risks that were in there. So I was looking for something else anyway, I think, to engage my mind. And with the IFEs, what I've found is that you do gain an awful lot of knowledge, but what they're seeking for individuals to apply, and I think it was why I was quite successful at it, was that they want you to apply that knowledge to a situation and show understanding. Yeah.
That's got a lot of correlation into now what Nogga's become, I suppose.
It really has. It's it goes back to that when the bells go down. I've already given you this knowledge, and understanding at the station. When you go out, it might not quite be how this PowerPoint or e-learning or video package actually demonstrated. I now need you to think. And I need you to switch some of that knowledge and understanding into this application. In the safe knowledge that I'm expecting you to do some activity here. I'm expecting you to work towards a successful resolution. So the IFE, I think one of the examples where you start to look at building materials was around metals, and we learn 593 degrees C, etc. So let's call it
expansion and
let's
all that
call it
jazz
600 degrees for metal to start leading 2/3 of its structural integrity, etc. So you know that for the exam. You also know for the exam that carbon monoxide at 609 degrees C will auto-ignite. So I'm thinking now, where's my understanding? How do I combine these two bits of info? So I'm now breathing apparatus 1, going into an industrial unit fire, and I can see tongues of flame in the heat layer above me. I can see metal ore. I know it's a metal structure from my size from outside. My understanding is applying the knowledge now in there. I understand that heat is significant. It will be affecting elements of structure in the building, and I need to consider that as I move through it. And for me, that's where I've never used the Bernoulli equation in my life. No. You lose.
But you also see, I think of it like the Matrix sometimes. This might sound a little bit weird. But when you do understand things like Bernoulli principles, and then you start looking at different hydro pressures and how hydrodynamics works, and then you look at dams and weirs, and you can sort of, and even just air as it passes in and out of rooms and strange things like that, and our vehicles and airplanes. It kind of looks like the Matrix, because then you can kind of look at the world in a slightly different way. Am I being a bit sad there, or do you have any of that? Because
I don't do any of that.
Do you know, honestly, it makes me think about things differently. I just walked past so many things in life before and gone, oh yeah, it's just a dam, it's just a whatever. Now you're like, crikey, did you know this? And
weirdly, you stick a tap on when you see a narrowing of the water to a small point. I don't think now about Bernoulli or pitot tubes, etc. But
you must have gone home with one of your kids. You didn't have children at the time, did you?
No.
I do.
Our first child was on the way when I was doing my studying for the level 4 certificate. But what I think the key bit is, and for me, knowledge. Learn the list, learn the elements that impact something. But if you can't turn it into something usable, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there's a criticism about the IFE, it's just a big...
When am I ever going to need to know that?
Exactly, yeah. But it's a component part. So you spoke about weirs there very briefly and Bernoulli's, etc. All we're talking about is airflow, water flow, it's about dynamics and pressure, etc. Right, what's the understanding then? I'm going to apply that to smoke. When I see smoke moving through a building, I understand what's going to happen about pressure, why pressure is going to have an impact, what's the density of the smoke is telling me, the colour of it, the nature of it. And the knowledge is useless unless you can convert it into understanding. Anybody can recite the benefits of a knot, what a good knot should do. But apply it to something practical. And that's
the armchair theoreticians that practically haven't had that practical application.
It's the beauty of it, because I'm going out to the incidents and I'm seeing these in front of us, the same as the hazards and control measures. And I've got some underpinning knowledge around those buildings to say that needs to happen now because I know what could happen because of my knowledge. And that's applying my knowledge in a situation to show understanding. I think that's where the strength of the IFE is for me. You do lose, 60-70% of the background material goes, but you're left with the understanding. Does that make sense?
Now, they always say that one of the best ways to learn is to take somebody from what they know to what they don't know. Find them something that they're aware of and then try and, find it. When you talk about like vacuums and pumping, I always just use the analogy of a straw. When you suck through a straw, what's happening? And now this is what we're doing when we're trying to draw water. Take someone from what they know to what they don't know. Given how going through professional development and stuff had given you a greater conceptual understanding of what you were doing, how early on in people's career do you think that can be of benefit? Because like I say, you've got to have a bit of a grounding for which to apply the learning to. And some people can come in and go, oh, well, I've only been in a few years, I don't need to do any of that. Or they go, oh, I don't want to get promoted. And I'm like, development's not just about linear. It's not just about going up in the ranks. It can make your width of knowledge. So how soon on do you think people can start benefiting from not just the IFEs, but any form of that professional development?
Immediately, I think. I was a probationer on the pump, and I was looking at the sub-officers and crew manager, my fellow firefighters, and gleaning bits of information from them. Because at the start, you're looking at your equipment and how to use your equipment in different ways than you were taught just in your training. We've often, all of us, done the sort of salvage drill where we know at the end of it we're probably going to get soaked. But that's practical firefightership. How are we actually going to use our equipment in a different way? That can start straight away. I think the key bit is, even not for promotion, but for personal development, this is a career, it's a professional career, so why shouldn't we be good at it? I think there's a personal responsibility there to be effective as a firefighter, to gain that knowledge and awareness about your equipment, how to use it effectively and safely, so that we can actually help as many people as possible.
Do you think personal and professional development, or just learning in general, gets harder as people get older? Because we hear words like recruit, or we hear words like student, and sometimes if you're playing word association game, people might go, students, young people, recruits, young people. Now, people are joining emergency services at many different ages, bringing a wealth of knowledge from outside of the industry into it. But some people have this idea of when they finish school, education finishes. I've got my hand of cards and this is what I've managed to compile, and I've got to go into the universe and try and play these cards and see what value exchange I can get from people. For so many mature students that we have now, what advice would you have them, or how do you think people who have been in their career for maybe 10 years and now think, I'm a little bit behind the curve, why do you think it's so difficult for them to engage in it, and do you still think it's beneficial for them?
I do think it's beneficial for them. I think it comes back to that core purpose, isn't it? We're trying to help people, and to maintain your personal drive is probably one impact. And somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, it was really interesting, I was having quite a discussion on learning styles, and my inference was that, and culturally we've been like this, but it has changed according to what you've just said there, Pete, was that somebody comes in age 20 into the fire rescue service, and the modern 20-year-old has grown up with all of this technology, X, Y, Z. However, the reality is we are getting people that are joining the service at 30, 35, 40 that haven't necessarily had that background. So we have to provide a range of options.
Can't force them into the square hole of going, oh, well, it's all virtual reality now.
Exactly.
Well, can't look at a book or a document.
So it does need to be. It can be face-to-face. It can
Yeah.
be flat sort of PowerPoint learning. It can be virtual reality. There needs to be a range of methods for people to access so that they can get the learning. I think if we provide the vehicle for those individuals to do it, that will assist in the motivation element. But I do also think that there needs to be that personal drive to say, actually, this is a professional career that I'm in and I'm going to be good at it. I now need you to support me as a service in where do I go to get this information.
Yeah.
So I think there's two sides to it. There's a personal responsibility element, but we do need to provide, and we are providing the ability to access the information in different ways.
Yeah.
And we will be improving that. I think sometimes in the fire service we look for the solution should be completed. That's it. That's how we do it. And I read an interesting book a year or two ago, Black Box Thinking by
Matthew Syed. Fantastic book.
And let's get it out there.
If anyone has not read that, go and look at Bounce first, maybe, and then go into Black Box Thinking. Really fascinating. Really
good. But the inference from there is take the learning as you go along. If you wait for the perfect solution to come along, you're already too late. You've already missed the boat. That's what you do in private. In public sector, let's put it out there. Let's start to work on it. And I think that's where Oracle, which is our learning management system, and the 36-month planner it's not absolutely perfect. But we're iterative change.
Well, the fact the emergency services exists would suggest we don't live in a perfect community or a perfect environment, nor should we ever, because perfection might mean going back generations into some dictatorial, everyone looks the same, everyone does the same, and we're all perfect. We want variation, we want diversity, and the only way for us to counter that and continue to support it is to have more collaboration of how do we adapt and evolve for these people that are both within the service and within our communities. We've got to keep learning. We've got to stay curious about it.
And listening to feedback, our organisational culture has moved over the last 4 or 5 years to one of getting feedback back in. Let's listen to it. We've just done some work on the methane message that links into Jessup. And from staff feedback...
For anybody unfamiliar, sorry, just double click on methane.
Yes, for me, the feedback that came from staff and the evidence that they were applying it regularly, frequently, and in the correct manner then supports the fact that actually we can adjust this now. So it's twofold, is that we're really open to the ideas, and again with the Oracle, the learning management system, is feedback. If we feedback, we can improve it. It links back to that black box thinking. Otherwise, you're just never moving forward.
Yeah, like learning to drive, isn't it? Learn a very prescriptive way. I always tell people there's freedom in discipline, and what I mean by that is become very disciplined, do it in one set structural way, and then once you've got the discipline and you have a real grounding in it, then you have the freedom to act outside of it, not completely outside of it, but you can interpret it and then choose how best to apply it. But until you've got a solid understanding of it, stick with your own personal discipline. It's like, to use fitness as an example, people talk about eating and drinking right and stuff like that. You can have lots of freedom and stuff, but unless you've got a good understanding of what healthy living and healthy eating means, you're just walking around in the dark and trying to do what you think is best. But get the discipline first. Same with this. Learn the procedural way that it's practiced first, the prescriptive method. Then you can have freedom in how you choose to use it.
That's right. I think you can move around it, and that discipline is about your own ability to engage with learning and the training. And then I think if you can have that discipline, you might choose a range of different ways to apply your learning style.
Yeah. I wanted to come on to your own personal or professional development. I know we've sort of touched base on it there. A lot of the people that we've had on the podcast previously are either just coming into their careers or they operate at, with the greatest of respect, a lower level of services. And then we seem to have jumped straight up to speaking with chiefs of police and chiefs of fire officers, but we very, very rarely get to interact with people in what I would perhaps describe as the messy middle, in where they are at a different level in their career. What does professional development, I mean, for people that are unfamiliar, what level are you at within the UK Fire and Rescue Service, and what does professional development look like for you?
So my position's a middle management sort of element, so it's tactical level, so it's trying to apply the strategy that's been decided from our senior management team and develop the strategy into a plan, deliver the plan and check that the plan's sufficient and it's working, and feedback then, as we spoke earlier on the statistics or the changes that are needed to be made. As that middle manager, you've got across that tactical level, you've got a lot of influence through our support departments as in that tactical level and in the operational to work together to try to drive change, to drive forward momentum. That personal development really it's multifaceted, I would say, especially the last 24 months with the COVID. My personal development as a result of doing a range of activities with individuals and organisations I wouldn't normally interact with.
I look at this as like post-traumatic growth time, where people have had to do a lot of different things, learning from home, so many things they would never have had the opportunity. It sounds harsh describing it as an opportunity, but we never would have got that development had we not have been through something like that. And we can take so much growth from it.
Well, growth mindset.
Yep.
Is a very, very key aspect. And I think I spoke early on about what is a flame. I've got my natural lean in personality is towards a learning style. I enjoy learning, the pleasure of finding things out. And for me, that period is my growth mindset allowed me to go out and work with those individuals and partners. And then it's my personality I bring to that, or my drive to actually achieve whatever we set out to do, that then means it can actually happen. But if you've not got a self-reflective style in that personal development, it doesn't matter what it is, and if I can't take the learning out of it and embed it into my future behaviour, I think that's something that is key to personal development.
It takes a lot of humility and self-awareness to be able to do that, though.
I think so, and certain individuals won't have that mindset, and that can stifle progression. But if we can foster that, and I think one way we can foster that is by we use it in our debriefing. It's not about who, it's about what and why. Yeah. So if we remove blame...
Yeah, if you take the who out of it, it takes all that emotional charge of personal finger pointing. Yeah. The who is irrelevant, really. We don't want it to happen to anybody.
And there may be some, on the what. There may be some learning there about personal responsibility in the way that your behaviour, what you were expecting the outcome to be, and how you arrived at that decision, for argument's sake. However, the key bit is not to publicly and not to reinforce that this was about an individual. This was about what went wrong or what went well, and how we can improve or sustain that going forwards. So if you can create that organisational culture, then the growth mindset will increase, people will become more engaged, and then this layer that you spoke about earlier on, I suppose, around promotion. It's not necessarily always about promotion. No. Individuals can be and should be content at wherever they are within the service, and an operational or support environment, however, should have the growth mindset and supported in feeding back to improve the organisation. Because
they can expand their knowledge laterally as well. Just because, like you used the word content, you can still have a very learning orientated career as a firefighter for 30 years and still never finish learning.
Completely. And you get individuals, and I would encourage it, is that move from an ops position into areas like learning development, or some of our support roles within, say, operational planning, etc., because it gives you a different facet to the service and helps you recognise how everything plugs together. And
you look at the same thing from a different perspective. Yeah, you change your lens and go, wow, I didn't see what was on the other side of that, or I just thought this stuff arrived on station.
Exactly.
I didn't see how it happened.
We spoke earlier on about what's the strategic JESIP, sort of how do we embed that? And you go, well, actually, it's happening behind the scenes. We don't always see. And my elements of my department plan and others are sort of linked together. That's where I think we've improved a lot, is that we talk to each other to say, well, I need this and you need that. How do we move forward together within the service? So it's slow change. It's an oil tanker, but we are.
It's just like trying to turn the Titanic around, isn't it?
As long as it doesn't get stuck in the sewers, we'll be all right.
How do what level of coaching do people at your level sort of receive? Because I always, when we do talk about fixed mindsets and stuff, I always say that one of the biggest challenges we face and one of the real barriers to us making those changes is really talented, really driven, really resourceful people in that fixed mindset, and that requires support, coaching, feedback loops from people they respect, people they admire. How does coaching, because coaching is something that's new as a formal thing to a lot of fire and rescue services. I think we used to rely, I think we said before we came on, about old hands-on watches, mentors, informal sponsors or whatever that people might have in a service who would informally coach them. But things have become a little bit more structured in that now. We are giving... Does coaching exist at your level and above? Because we're seeing it in station levels across the UK.
I think it does exist. I think we've got quite a long way to travel. Okay. It's certainly not an area of my expertise in terms of lots of depth of information, but in in overview, for me, is it's something that's definitely required. And from what I've heard, that we're trying to remove a sheep dip style approach, that everybody gets one of these, or they get some of that. And I think more tailored personal development, again, it fosters from individuals that actually have considered my needs and tried to move.
Well, we can't. There's a hypocrisy in wanting a more diverse emergency services workforce in the UK, and then not facilitating a diverse approach to supporting the individual, I suppose.
Definitely, but I think there is almost a bit of a drive as well at a national level. We spoke earlier on about the fire standards for operations, so next year there's going to be standards around leadership and what leadership is, and to drive exciting. Leadership at a middle or senior level as well, in terms of to create organisational change. Coaching, no doubt, will be a key element of it. So it's about how do we gear the service up to it's coming down the road, whether we like it or not with a fire standard, but it's the right thing to do anyway. But I think it's needs a lot more support and work done on it. To be honest with you, I think it's still in very much an inception phase. But that's a personal view.
So looking back at development, are there any resources or books that you think would be really useful for people to go and look at to either cultivate, nurture, or enhance their own personal or professional development?
I don't know. There's certain aspects. I enjoy autobiographies as well.
Love it.
I think there's a really good book called Endurance.
Yes.
Shackleton's. Alfred Lansing. I thought that was particularly good. I liked the book. Wasn't about leadership styles, but it's threaded through it about how he coordinated the rescue of those individuals and also changed the vision. The initial vision was this, and he was hell-bent on achieving it. However, recognised that we need to change this, and the aim now was something different, getting these individuals back alive. I thought that's a very good book. I suppose Stephen Covey's, I think it's 7 Habits.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You said about things like black box thinking as well, just to encourage people to look at things in a different way. There's a book called Kaizen, which people will be familiar with, of continuous improvement perhaps. There's a lot of things in that area that I think of applications across all of industry, but certainly in the emergency services, where some places we are struggling to get to move forward from an older approach. There's lots of ways there. You've said a few things about PDCAs, and then you can look into 5 Whys. A lot of that comes from Kaizen and continuous improvement and Sigma. There's a book about 6 Sigma, different ways of looking at a problem, defining a problem statement, how innovation and change exists in organizations. There's so many learnings there that we in the emergency services can take from industry, because they're doing it with the greatest respect. I know we deal with real things, but they're doing it with real money, with their own money, and very, very different decisions that mean it does need to work. So there's so many lessons we can learn from that, I think.
I think so. We spoke about coaching as well, and in the absence of direct coaching or direct sort of personal development necessarily, and that might be my failing for not asking for further. However, because of that learning sort of style anyway, I read a lot of areas. If I said as well, say social media, I think there's a tendency, I couldn't back this up with data, but you follow the people that have like-minded views. Absolutely. Actually change it up. Have some people that have got opposing views.
Throw a cat amongst the pigeons,
and in reading different areas, then for me, it's almost like sometimes when you go on a course, you might only get 10 or 15% of new stuff out of it. But if you can get a couple of little gems, and then if I can build it into my way of working going forwards, it's constant improvement again of me as an individual that I can then apply, hopefully, apply that understanding to the work I'm doing.
You always only take 1 or 2 good news. I always find if you read something more than once as well, I certainly listen to a lot of audiobooks, and when you listen to it first time, you'll be that dumbstruck by something you hear that you'll spend so long going, God, that was really interesting. You spend the next 4 or 5 seconds and you miss the next thing that gets said. So if you reread a book or re-listen to something, you'll often take something completely different, because you'll also perhaps be at a different stage in your life. What do you think are some of the essential characteristics of a good leader?
Okay, well, quite a complex one, I suppose. I'd say I'm a magpie, quite observant, or try to be observant, and have picked up over the years elements of good practice and poor practice, where that poor practice has really impacted, and sort of take that as a leadership style. But really, I think a couple of key qualities would link to being honest, being open to change. I think inspiring people if you can, and the way you do that.
That's a difficult one, because it's a very personal thing as well, isn't it? How you inspire each individual can be challenging for a lot of people.
And
but you've got to stay curious. You've got to be sincerely interested in the person to want to inspire them.
So that indicates that we need trust.
Yes.
If we've not got a position of trust when we're working together, then how am I going to be inspired by your, and I know people say vision quite often, but effectively if I'm trying to achieve something, a bigger picture, I need to work with individuals I can build trust on. So that requires some honesty. It also requires from a leader as well, doing what you say you'll do.
Yeah.
You know, if say I'm going to achieve something, we're going to do it. I'm going to work together, working with individuals and teams, finding their strengths and weaknesses and being good at that, and recognizing that I need a diverse team. I need people around me that are going to challenge the thoughts and opinions of myself and others, because that way we get all of the ideas in the melting pot.
Yeah.
And then we're probably going to get some way towards a half decent solution.
Yeah.
And we can adapt it as we go forward. But if I do it sat in a darkened room on my own and say, this is what we're doing, I'm now managing a team.
Yes.
I'm not leading a team, is my bit. So
important distinctive difference, that is.
Development, I think, allows the individual or the team members to start going, there's some credits in the bank here that I'm doing by taking some time out to try and tailor that development. And I think that's a good leadership quality for those days when we get elements happen like COVID, where I'm asking you to actually probably step up a little bit further, and especially into a field that's not particularly comfortable to you. Yeah. But the relationships that you've built up through leading effectively, I hope, means that actually
you've got to invest that leadership capital.
Yeah.
Don't do a solid 1-for-1 exchange. I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Sometimes do it because you think it's the right thing to do, and then you'll be surprised what people will do for you when the time really comes.
And trying not to do it with personal agendas as well, I think, is a critical thing.
So taking it back from people going into leadership positions, we're going through a lot of recruitment in the UK Fire and Rescue Service at the minute. A lot of people listening on the podcast who are perhaps looking to get into services. What advice would you have, and what do you think are great characteristics of a firefighter?
I think the core reasons people should be joining is around the desire to help people. I think a characteristic of someone that's got empathy, has got a desire to support our communities. We need individuals that are going to come in, that are going to add value to trying to drive that change in the communities. It's not just about firefighting. It's not just about attending incidents. It's about taking part in trying to advance our community safety, trying to prevent the fires occurring in the first place. And as we've seen sort of through the COVID sort of pandemic as well, is about how we're supporting an effective response out in our communities. And effectively the world's changing. We spoke earlier on about lithium ion batteries, etc., but we've also got mental health problems. We are seeing a national increase in suicides, and the impacts on our society are going to be felt for a long period of time. And we encourage individuals to join that want to be part of that solution, to try to help. So again, it's being open, engaging, enthusiastic. It is a changing environment, and we're going to have a lot of recruitment nationally as well as locally, I believe, over the next few years. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity there to look at other positions as well if you've got that desire to move forward. So I think for characteristics, I've spoken about obviously a caring nature, but also a nature where you want to come and assist with problem solving and being enthusiastic about your approach.
I think you made a great point there as well, and I just want to add to it that you said about mental health in our communities. A lot of the people applying for positions in the fire and emergency services, they're also part of the community as well. And we've really changed gears. I can only speak from a UK perspective, that how we are thinking and treating our staff as well, because they are members of the community with the added layer that they are exposed to and interact with a lot of trauma. So the way that we've had a number of with the Firefighters charity and wellbeing experts and studies into mental health in the emergency services. We've had a number of people on with that. We're really changing. And it really fills me with joy as I do a lot of trim and I do a lot of coaching myself. It's great to see that we're not just looking at how can we best support the community, which I think we always want to do as well, but the way we look after our staff, if you feel and hear the same, it seems to be getting a lot more. We have a great level of awareness of what our staff are exposed to.
Definitely, and the well-being aspect is really being driven forwards now, and it's great to see. The trim is one example, and for me, it's all those other elements about offering support to an individual that might be in mental health crisis or has got mental health issues, and appropriate support, and having varied options of how to interact with different supporting networks is going to be key to ensure we've got a sort of robust, resilient workforce going forwards. I think a benefit of doing that, not only for the individual, so that we are adequately supporting them, and hopefully through going through that support process, improving them. And so, assisting in either dealing with or managing or resolving those mental health issues. From the service side, you've got a much more engaged employee, less
they're much
absentee.
more engaged. They'll be much more effective at work because they feel like you care about them as a person and not just as a number.
Which links back to that trust and the sort of value aspect about leading a service. It requires you to actually take real care of your staff, and then you don't have as many levers. You get people that are probably going to be looking at how they can engage with the service to provide more solutions.
Yeah, it's lag and lead measures. Love it. For people across the UK who perhaps have been unfamiliar with it tragically, or even people outside of the UK, what's the best way for them to learn a little bit more about national operational guidance? If perhaps another service or another country wants to see what we're doing, where's it accessible for them?
Okay, so ukfrs.com is the website. One of the areas that you'll see on the top strapline there is tools. If you click into tools, they've got some engagement videos, 2-3 minute long videos, tells you what ops guidance is, how it should be used, what we're trying to achieve with it. Hazard control measure philosophy, 2 or 3 minute videos, nice and simple to sort of start off that process. What I will say we quite often get is called the nog fog. You very first start reading national operational guidance, it does take a little bit of getting into and use. The idea is you take in snippets of information.
Dip in, take a look, step back out, digest it, go back in for more.
However, it is there for individuals to read.
Perfect. Ben, thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers.